It is my great pleasure to welcome to the Hebden Bridge Film Festival the documentary filmmaker Yaser Talebi and interpreter Narguess Fazard from the Center for Iranian Studies, from SOAS and Persian lecturer as interpreter. So thank you very much, Narguess. I would really first of all like to say congratulations to Yaser on this beautiful film and all the many, many awards and recognition that it has received around the world. First of all, I'd like to ask Yaser, what drew you to Firouzeh and why did you want to make a film about her?
مرسی از در واقع تعارفات و تمجیدهایی که داشتین. من خیلی دوست داشتم از مادر بزرگم فیلم بسازم که خیلی شبیه فیروزه بود.
Yaser says that he always wanted to make a film about his grandmother, who is very similar to Firouzeh.
اما این فرصت فراهم نشد به خاطر اینکه مادر بزرگ من خیلی زود از دنیا رفت.
Of course, this never became a reality because his granny passed away quite early on.
مادر بزرگ من خیلی زن اکتیو و فعالی بود و زنانی که در سرزمین ایران زندگی میکنن به شدت فعال هستن و همپای مردانشون تلاش میکنن.
Yaser's granny was a typical of Iranian women who are incredibly active and have quite a backbone. And this is true of so many women in Iran who are so self-sufficient and independent and very active.
وقتی من اولین بار فیروزه رو دیدم گفتم واو مادر بزرگ من زنده شد.
The first time I met Firouzeh, I saw Firouzeh, I thought, wow, that's my granny come back to life.
با فیروزه نشستم و از مادر بزرگم براش تعریف کردم و گفتم که من خیلی دوست داشتم که از مادر بزرگم فیلم بسازم و شما رو که میبینم یاد مادر بزرگم افتادم. آیا اجازه میدید از شما فیلم بسازم؟
So when he met Firouzeh, sat down with her and he said, you remind me so much of my grandmother, and would you allow me to make a film based on your life, which would be very much like I have made a film about my grandmother.
فیروزه گفت اگر تو کار من دخالت نکنی و منم تو کار تو دخالت نکنم ممکنه این کار اتفاق بیفته.
So she said her reply was that yes, if you don't interfere with my life in what I do, and I am not going to interfere with what you are going, then yes, we have a deal. That can happen.
و ما این قرار رو با هم گذاشتیم. چند روز من بدون دوربین پیش فیروزه بودم و فیروزه برگشت به من گفتش که چرا تو کارتو شروع نمی‌کنی؟ این مسخره بازی‌ها چیه؟
خیلی خوب. And then so they spent a few days together with no camera visible, no filming was taking place. And then afterwards she said, one day she stopped him and said, well, what's going on? I mean, what are you playing at? When are you going to start your work and filming?
و کار ما شروع شد و با هم دوست شدیم.
And that's how it all began, and they got on very well indeed.
So I wanted to ask, you clearly got on extremely well with Firouzeh, who is a force of nature. How long did you spend with her?
من نزدیک به 2 سال با فیروزه همراه بودم.
I spent almost 2 years with her, almost.
ولی نه هر روز.
But not every day.
من چون در واقع مردمان اون سرزمین و شغلشون رو میشناسم میدونستم تو بزنگاه‌ها و چه تایم‌هایی باید برم ملاقات فیروزه.
Because I know the people of that area quite well, I knew when were the crucial times when I ought to be there and appear and film.
و برای همین در واقع تو تایم‌های مختلف در فصول مختلف سال که فعالیت‌های متفاوتی داشت میرفتم و ازش فیلم میگرفتم.
Therefore, I would turn off at significant junctures in the season that it was, crucial to film. So I would turn up and I would film those occasions.
و یکی از سخت‌ترین کارهای من جلب رضایت فیروزه بود.
Yaser points out that one of the most crucial things and difficult things were to win Firouzeh over and to get her to agree to them.
من روزها و ماهها و سالها با فیروزه همراه بودم. فیروزه بعد از 2 سال به من گفت یاسر الان من و تو شدی مادر و فرزند.
He spent a long time with her for almost 2 years in and out of her life. And eventually, after 2 years, one day Firouzeh said to Yaser, I think we now have that mother and son relationship.
That is very touching to hear.
Yes.
Can I say, really, one of the things that struck me about the film that it's very, very, it's extraordinary observational filmmaking, and it made me think of Viktor Kosakovsky and the Belovs. I don't know if you know this Russian filmmaker. Are there other filmmakers who have influenced you?
نه من از نه من خیلی تحت تاثیر کاساکوفسکی نیستم. من خب بله سینمای روسیه رو دنبال میکنم. من خیلی اهل فیلم دیدن هستم و خب شیفته سینما.
He said that no, he's really not influenced by Viktor Kosakovsky, although he is an avid watcher of films and very much the Russian cinema, and he certainly watches a lot of films.
من سینما رو در دانشگاه یاد نگرفتم. من سینما رو از مردم سرزمینم، آشنایی با مردم سرزمینم و سفر کردن با اونها یاد گرفتم.
He says, I didn't really learn about cinema at university. My main tutors in filmmaking were the people of my country when I traveled with them and when I traveled through Iran.
اما خب مشتاق دیدن فیلم‌های عباس کیارستمی بودم که در دنیا شناخته شده است.
And of course, I was an avid follower of Abbas Kiarostami's cinema and films, and I always, watched his films.
خب مردم سرزمین من هنردوست هستن، به دیدن در واقع به زیارت مقبره شعراشون میرن. این نشان میده که قصه و وجود دراما توی وجود ما شرقی‌ها، به خصوص ما ایرانی‌ها، خیلی نهادینه است.
He says the people of my country really do love the arts, and they go when they go on pilgrimage, they go to the mausoleums of their poets, and they are absolutely in touch with the mythology of their land, and they love storytelling. And therefore, when I encounter them, I learn about their land.
و وقتی پاندمیک اومد سر کار، همه ما به این فکر بودیم که واقعا چیکار میتونیم بکنیم اگر همین الان زندگی ما استاپ بشه، چه اتفاقی میفته. من همیشه به دوستانم میگفتم که ای کاش من زمان بیشتری داشته باشم که بتونم ویژگی‌های مردم سرزمینم رو ثبت کنم.
Yaser points out that when, despite all the awful effects of when COVID-19 started and the pandemic across the world, but in a way he found an opportunity, like he'd always told his friends, that if only I could have a little more time to focus on visiting parts of Iran or understanding a little more about my own land and my own culture.
I wanted to ask you, Yaser, did you film on a classic kind of 50mm lens, and do you think it makes a difference how you tell the story when you're using something like that instead of using zooms and all sorts of things?
من قبل اینکه فیلم برداری رو شروع کنم خیلی با خودم کلنجار رفتم که من این قصه رو باید چجوری تعریف کنم.
Before I started filming, I really struggled with myself to see how am I going to narrate this story.
خیلی داستان‌ها راجع به کاراکترهای مثل فیروزه ساخته شد.
There are many films made about characters similar to Firouzeh.
برای من چیزی که مهم بود این بود که به سینمای مستند وفادار باشم، مخاطب باور کنه زندگی این کاراکتر رو.
The essential thing for me was that I must be true to the main objectives of documentary filmmaking, and the viewer must really, be at home, must really encounter the character I'm trying to introduce.
برای همین لنز 50 میلیمتری رو انتخاب کردم که این لنز شبیه نگاه ما انسان هاست.
Therefore, I chose the 50mm lens because it's almost the same as the way we look at things.
و الا ساخت فیلم‌هایی از این دست و ساخت قهرمان جعلی به واقع خیلی کار ساده‌ایه. من ولی صبوری کردم و گفتم بذار در وجود این زن هر آنچه که حقیقت هست من کشف کنم، چون یک چالش برای خود من.
There are many films made about characters that they may come across as rather phony and unreal, and therefore this was his own. He wanted to remain faithful, and he really wanted to present this person as she truly was.
And I think I would like to say to Yaser that that discipline and that rigor of filmmaking actually is clear. The audience receive Firouzeh because of his filmmaking skill.
Absolutely.
فیروزه زمانی که جلوی دوربین من بود، یعنی وقتی میمد جلوی دوربین من فیلم میگرفتم و زمانی که دوربینمو قطع میکردم فیلم برداریمو، اصلا هیچ فرقی نمیکرد. در حالی که ما اگر بخوایم جلوی دوربین بیایم سعی میکنیم که زیبا باشیم، شیک صحبت کنیم و توپق نزنیم.
He says the most striking thing was that the Firouzeh you see on screen when the camera was rolling is exactly the same Firouzeh that when the camera was switched off. Unlike so many people who better themselves, they try to speak more properly, come across as, unreal sometimes, but not Firouzeh. And this is what he wanted to achieve.
من برای اینکه وارد حریم خصوصی فیروزه بشم نیاز داشتم که اعتمادش رو جلب کنم. تنها خودم و یک صدا بردار 2 نفر بودیم و فیروزه، یعنی ما این فیلمو ستایی ساختیم.
He says that it was essential that he could win her over and win her trust and not to barge into her life, and therefore there were only 3 people in this film: Yaser himself as a director, a sound recorder, and Firouzeh herself.
Fantastic. And could I ask a little bit more about Firouzeh and the story? Did her children visit at all any time when you were filming in the 2 years?
1 سال 365 روزه و من یه وقتایی میدیدم که از این 365 روز شما در نظر بگیرید شاید 5 روزش بچه‌ها یه سری به فیروزه میزدن.
He says, remember, a year is 365 days, and out of these 365 days, perhaps 5 days a year, some of her children would visit.
و من این 5 روز رو کنار گذاشتم.
But he deliberately did not film these 5 days. He set those aside.
من در زمستان سخت به دیدن فیروزه رفتم و به فیروزه گفتم آیا بچه‌ها بهت سر زدن یا نه، و اون گفتش که نه و من میخوام به اونا تلفن کنم و من گفتم اجازه دارم از تو فیلم برداری کنم؟ گفت با من بیا.
He visited her during one of the harshest winters, and in that winter that we see, he said, have your children visited? And she said no, but I would actually like to go and phone them. So he also asked if he would be allowed to accompany her and film her making the call, and she said that's fine.
وقتی من اون صحنه رو فیلم برداری کردم به فیروزه گفتم فیروزه ممکنه وقتی بچه‌ها تو این صحنه تلفن رو ببینن ناراحت میشن. برگشت به من گفت این صحنه رو من میگم که تو فیلم بذار.
When he was filming this scene, afterwards he said, Firouzeh, what if your children see this scene and then they might become very upset or annoyed that I filmed this? And she said, I want you to film this and broadcast this very scene exactly.
اما یه نکته رو بگم، شخصیت‌های در واقع بچه‌های در واقع فیروزه شخصیت‌های بد ماجرای ما نیستن. اونها هم به نوعی گرفتاری‌های خودشون دارن. بخش اعظمشون در کلانشهرهایی مثل تهران زندگی می‌کنن.
He says, please don't assume that characters like the children who may not come across as very well, they are not the villains of the story. Please bear in mind the struggles that they have in their lives. Many of them have moved to these, mega cities like Tehran and have their own struggles. They are not wicked.
و فیروزه این سبک زندگی رو انتخاب کرده. فیروزه تصمیم گرفته آگاهانه گذشته رو در امروز زندگی کنه.
It's very much Firouzeh's choice to live the life she's living. She is very determined and very clearly has chosen to live. She wants her present day life to be the continuation of the past that she knows and she cherishes.
I think that it's very clear that Firouzeh is her own person and that she is formidable and that she would not be a pushover. And that is part of why we love her.
من یه خاطره از فیروزه براتون بگم. دعوت شدم به جشنواره در برلین، جشنواره برلیناله، و با من تماس گرفتن و گفتن اگر ممکنه فیروزه رو با خودت بیار.
He says, I'd love to share a memory about Firouzeh with you. I was invited to the Berlin Film Festival and they asked me, would you bring Firouzeh with you, please?
وقتی من به فیروزه زنگ زدم گفتم فیروزه خانم قراره که آلمانی‌ها از تو دیدن کنن و خیلی دوست دارن تو بیای، گفت بریم به سلامت، اگر من قرار باشه بیام کی از گاوا نگهداری کنه.
So I called Firouzeh and I said, Madame Firouzeh, the film festival is extending an invitation to you, and the German audiences would love to have you there in present. And she said, well, thank them very much on my behalf, but if I accept and come with you, who's going to look after the cows?
I love that story. Obviously, she can't go to the Berlin Film Festival. Who's going to look after the cows? It's the first thing I thought of as well. So I love talking to you, Yaser, and I wish we could talk a long time. But could you finish by telling us, are you working on any new film at the moment?
بله، فیلم جدیدی که دارم کار میکنم، یعنی وقتی فیلم در واقع اول 2019 که شروع شد، من فیلم تازه‌مو شروع کردم.
So he said the film that I'm working on, it's a project that I actually started in 2019.
و الان سال 2021 و من همچنان دارم کار میکنم.
And now 2021, 2 years on, I am still working on it.
اما یک داستان کاملا متفاوت.
But it's a completely different story.
داستان یک دختر تینیج که با پدرش زندگی میکنه و به تازگی مادرش از دست داده.
It's about a teenage girl living with her father who has only recently lost her mom.
اما خانواده این دختر با خانواده سایرین متفاوته.
But the family of this girl are very different to the typical family.
پدرش در واقع mentally disabled.
The father has mental health issues.
و وقتی که این دختر به دنیا میاد، همیشه طی سالهایی که به مدرسه میرفته پدرش رو از بقیه قایم میکرده.
And during her childhood, when this girl was going to school every day, she would hide her father from her classmates and school.
حالا بعد مرگ مادرش اما مسئولیت نگهداری از پدر به عهده خودشه.
And now that her mother has passed away, the responsibility for taking care of the father is now squarely on her shoulder.
اما این دختر آرزوهایی داره، دوست داره به دانشگاه بره و بایستی دوستای محل زندگیشو ترک کنه، اما مشکل بزرگش نگهداری از پدره.
So she has her own ambitions and her own dreams. She wants to go to university, which means leaving her village. But who is going to take care of her father?
این داستان تردید، عشق و سراسر شور و هیجان عاطفی که بین پدر و دختر وجود داره، دستمایه این مستند تازه من است.
So this new documentary is really fed by the stories of ambitions, the doubts, the hesitations, the anxiety, the love, and all that a young girl will have, which forms the basis of...
اسم مستند من هست Destiny.
The name of this new documentary is Destiny.
I have one last question. Do you think that your subject for this documentary will be as much a collaborator as Firouzeh? Because Firouzeh was like a second filmmaker, wasn't she?
من راستش وقتی داشتم این فیلم تازه‌مو فیلم برداری می‌کردم، تمام نگرانیم از دختر تینیج بود، به خاطر اینکه این دختر تینیج همش دوست داشت جلوی دوربین خوشگل به نظر برسه.
So one of the issues that he had was that when starting to make this documentary, the girl, being a teenage girl, she really wanted to just appear beautifully done up and a perfect, actress in front of the camera.
وقتی رفتم به کانادا پشیمون شدم از اینکه این فیلمو بسازم. تایم طولانی پرواز باعث شد که به این فکر کنم که به جای اینکه من فوکس باشم رو دختر، بایستی 50-50 هم پدر رو داشته باشم هم دختر رو.
So when he flew to Canada to go to a film festival on this very, very long flight, he had time to think about it because he had decided to give up the project. He just didn't like how it was developing. During this long flight, he thought about it, that actually what he could do is not to focus on this teenage girl totally, but perhaps divide it, 50-50, to also focus on the father and have the girl less as the center of the documentary.
الانم که یک نسخه رافکات ازش آماده کردم، به ذرس قاطی میگم که از کارم راضی هستم و فکر میکنم که در ادامه مسیر فیلم بیلاوت رو به جلو هست.
And he says that now he has a rough cut of the
Okay.
film that he is working on. He is pleased with it, and he thinks it's every bit as good as Beloved. And perhaps
Well,
better.
well, I want to finish by saying we are really honored to have your beautiful
Thank you.
film here with us. And one day we hope to welcome you in person to Hebden Bridge Film Festival. Thank you so much, both of you. Narguess Fazard, for being an interpreter so beautifully, and particularly to you, Yaser, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your inviting. Thank you, Narguess جون برای translated.
My pleasure. My pleasure. We can't wait to have you over. Thank you so much.
عزیز منی. مرسی عزیزم.
Bye.